Well, I welcome everybody this evening to our class as usual. Grateful to have everybody here so that I may share some thoughts with you. It also helps me do my job, is the bottom line. So I appreciate you coming and letting me share a few things with you. This class that I'm doing, and as I wrote in the newsletter, it's not a class in the normal sense, but it's a very important one for myself in organizing, but I think it'll also help everybody else too. One of my frustrations is if you go to my website, and I've been trying to think, how can I organize things there? How can I put it in a way that if somebody's brand new and they just come to the website, you can just go in there and you find where to go, and there's all these classes, but how do I change them in order? And there's only so much that you can do when you can try to modify one of these things when you're not a webmaster and you don't have somebody that works full time, taking care of your website. And so I've just had this frustration about I know what's in there. I put it in there and I've taught all of it. But I'm thinking, how does a new person come, or somebody even that isn't brand new, they come and take a look, and how do I find what I need? So that's what the problem has been. I've been pondering this actually for the past couple of years while I've been doing this, and had all kinds of schemes and thoughts. What happened, as I told everybody when I was getting ready to figure out what I want to teach this Wednesday and trying to write a newsletter and what'll it be, and I was just blocked from being able to write. And in my frustration was part of it, going like, what am I going to do now? Now I've got hundreds of classes I can do. I got dozens of them. I can just pick them out and just do any one of them. Some of them are ready to go. Some of them need to be tuned up. Some of them are old and I've got to bring them up to date. And so lots of things I could do, but it's like, I'm just going to add more on this heap and be more confusing maybe to people. So that's what got me thinking, because one of the things I try to do, the way that I teach is, of course, I'm teaching with principles, but I also want to do it in a way that you're kind of organized. You have an organized structure of everything you need to learn and do and have. And it's about bringing focus to your energy, to your money, and those things. And I talk about that in the preparation side of things, what I was doing. But yet, when it comes to these classes, my website, to me, it was just like lots of luck here, folks, and that just doesn't work. So as I sat down and I couldn't write, and I was trying to think about what I'm doing, I've been pondering for days, how can I organize things? And then I said, okay, I'm done. I got to stop, get away from here, get comfortable, lean back in another chair, and ponder for a few moments, and then decide to just pray. I got to get some outside help here. And I spent in meditation, prayer, and thought. And after about, I don't know, it was a half hour or something like that, I had this idea to write something down. And it was to start where I've been talking about recently. And so I was write down on a paper, and I wrote a circle and put the worst risk we face. Now, that's one of the classes. And then there were all these lines coming off of it. I just put spokes on it in there. Well, now it's modified because I wrote things down. I had a list. I'm trying to think what's the way to do this. And as thoughts would come into my mind, I would write them down, and I have had to go back and just change and modify and try to make sense out of this in a way that I can present it. And what I'm going to share with you is what came from that. And it has greatly simplified what I'm going to do. Not how I do it necessarily, but how I'm going to present it in the long run, and make it also so that people, if you really want to learn, particularly if you're not familiar with what I've done through the years, if you really want to learn, where would you start? Well, you can start on a roadmap. And so that's what I've created. Now, I'm going to tell you a little bit how this came about, because I wrote down this one thing, put down this one box, and then it's like, okay, the next thing, well, if it's the worst thing that we face, and by the way, if you haven't watched that program, it's on YouTube, The Worst Risk We Face. I'll show you how to get there in a few minutes. If you haven't seen it, you ought to go watch it, because it's all about, well, loss of power grid. But why is the loss of power grid the worst thing that can happen? Well, I wrote a little class. We gave it here a week ago or so. And so I have that. And I said, okay, now that would answer part of the problem. But now what do you do about this thing? Because there's so many pieces to this thing. Well, if you remember, in all the time I talk about these 9 provident living modules, and because the point is, everything you need to know, do, and have for every day of your life is contained within those 9, not just for emergencies, but anytime and every time. It's all in there. So it's like, okay, well, that's got to be somewhere in here, kind of a foundation. And one of the other things I wrote down that I will talk about tonight, it's these rules of three: 3 seconds, 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. Now, you've probably heard some of those because they've been bandied around for a long time. I've expanded them. And so I wrote that down. I wrote down what they are. And it's like, okay, that's a hint on what we do. And then I'm thinking, like, well, if somebody's coming into this and we're talking about the worst possible thing that could happen, what is that? Is that an emergency, a disaster, a catastrophe? So I have this other little class that we've done here. Again, a week ago, I put it up about what are emergencies, disasters, catastrophes. How does it relate to all these things? And then it's like, okay, now one of the things I did some time ago that's up on YouTube is, and it's also on my website, is get in the box. Well, if you don't know what the box is, we're talking about the preparedness box. And that's a big mystery to a lot of people. There's a lot of people who are like, I don't know if I want to do that because gee whiz, if I start talking about emergencies, I'm going to make one of them happen. There's all kinds of reasons why people have excuses for really not engaging in these things. But if you're really concerned about some of the things that are going on, and if you watch the worst risk that we face and you say, well, that's a possibility. Maybe I need to get ready for it. So you could follow on this roadmap. Now, coming off of this 9 provident living modules, I identified by looking at the rule of threes that there's some of these that are really, really important. They're foundational, or we might use the word they're core. They're core to this learning. And this whole idea is I can't put up the roadmap to everything that I teach because there's dozens of them and it gets confusing. But if you're getting started, where would you begin? What's kind of the main path to follow if I want to be better prepared, or if I'm just beginning, or maybe I'm very advanced. I've been doing things for years, but it's like, have I missed something? Here's the path that you would follow. That's what I was putting down. So there are 5 of these modules that you want to take a look at and that are going to be in here right on the top of the list. Now, death will follow in 3 seconds. 3 seconds after what? Well, okay, if a wall falls on me in an earthquake or somebody shoots me in my head or something like that, I mean, okay, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about things have broken down around you, or this worst possible risk has happened and you could die within 3 seconds. What is that everybody has to contend with? It's your attitude. Now, this foundation video, this is a video that I've sold for years. It's now on my website. I'm also going to get it on YouTube here real quick because you should watch that. If you haven't watched it, watch it. Now, you don't have to pay for DVD anymore. It's just on my website. It's in the free library. I have some of the DVDs that I used to sell that are in the paid subscription library, but this one's free and in the open because I want everybody to have at least the thought that might stimulate to people about your attitude, about your thinking, about your outlook. Because if you lose it, the body may not quit functioning in 3 seconds, but if the mind quit, if you've given up, if I don't know what to do, I have no answers for it, I guess I'm going to die, then sometime in the next few hours to few days, because you'll fail to take care of yourself, you'll make a mistake, you'll wander into something that gets you in trouble, you're going to die. But that decision was made, and instantaneously, you're in the process of losing your life. So that's one that you really ought to watch. Then we come to another one that fits right in with that. What'll it be? Gloom and doom, panic, denial, apathy, or peace? You may want to watch that because, again, it's all about this foundational part of your life, which is how you think, what your outlook is. If you lose that, if you lose your head and your heart, you're going to lose your life, is what it comes down to, unless somebody is there to take care of you. So we follow down that path. Now, there's some more things in this attitude area, this foundational area. 2 more of them that are really important. This one, what if, then what? Oh, you got to watch that one. That one's very, very useful. Now, these are all on my website. This is the roadmap we're going to follow. And I've spent the past 2.5 days thinking about this thing, pondering on it, and working late hours trying to organize it in a way that makes sense, that'll be the most efficient way to lead people into this. And then We'll come up with some more roadmaps later on. Who packed your parachute? Who are you listening to that's packing your survival parachute, your emergency kit, your supplies in your basement? Is it a list somebody gave you? Is it a YouTube you're watching? Is it me or whatever it is? I mean, you've got to ask the question, who is it that you're following, or are you just kind of making up things, which is not bad. We need to study and figure things out for ourselves. But who is it that you're following and why? So that's one that will give you some principles and ideas about how you're going to set up some of your supplies, some of the things you're going to learn. Again, this is about what you need to learn, do, and have. And this what if, then what is really important because there's a lot of bad information out there. I love YouTube for what it'll do, but a lot of the things that are on YouTube are, if not wrong, some of them are downright wrong. I see some things on there that's going to kill you. That idea will get you in trouble. It's like I did a program, I need to do it again, about survival TV could kill you. Many of these different survival and reality shows and what have you, there were some of them that were really good, very, very useful. There were a couple of them that are really bad. They're extremely dangerous. And as far as I'm concerned, the producers of those shows should be sued for putting out information that will kill people. One of them was Bear Grylls and what he did. Now, he's an extremely skilled individual, a special forces English guy, very powerful. His muscle, his controls, his skills, all these things, and his mental focus and everything. But he showed things in that thing that he did. It was, let's see, Man Against Wild. Oh, he did things in there that were just absolutely stupid. You never do those things. But he was showing what he could do, and he got away with it most of the time. I remember when I was talking about that show, there was one time, because I was watching him, you get some good tips and ideas and thoughts, but I was also watching it for some of the horrible things he was doing if people were following him. As a matter of fact, there's a few deaths of record that people died after trying to emulate some of these survival guys, where they, without the skill and the practice of years, they went out, got themselves in trouble, got injured, and a few of them died. And I watched one of these where he was going down a river where he was making his own flotation device. He's lost, and it's a faster way to travel. So you jump in this raging spring river of cold water so you can move downstream at, 10, 12 miles an hour, and you're just floating along. Stupidest thing you could ever do. You don't do that. And he showed how you'd make a flotation device out of, he found a pack and he found some plastic bags and things and inflated them, what have you, and got on that thing, is leaning on it, going down through the little rapids and everything. Well, of course, he's got a camera crew with him and doing all this. And I watched him as he went into a rapid. They cut the video away, and then they show, obviously later, he's crawling up on the bank. He doesn't have that flotation device, but he has under his shirt. You could see that they've now put one under his shirt. It is obvious because he probably darn near drowned. They had to go fish him out, and then he went back to show that this is a great way to travel. Stupid to do that. Anyway, so you've got to figure out who it is that's packing your parachute, who you're listening to, who's teaching you, and are they teaching you enough? Are they going into enough depth so that you understand? Because some of these things work pretty good under one circumstance, but they may not work under others. So that's what, who packs your parachute is all about. All right, let's go a little further in this. Now then, I did a whole series of things on the Foundation Library on my website. There's 9 of these programs. The first couple of the reviews, the first 2, 3, or 4 on books. These are books that you need to have. You can get them, well, you should have them as printed books so that you can study them and pass them around in the future when your electronic things don't work. But you can also listen to them as an audiobook, which is what I do most of the time right now. I own the books, but I review them periodically again and again. That is a very important series. I'll say it's kind of an advanced one because there's 9 classes that are more than an hour long. That's a pretty serious series of classes. You should go through those. I would highly, highly recommend that you do that. Anyway, so there's some more. Now, where are we going in this? Ultimately, we're headed out to some of the really advanced things. In the members area, those that I show you there, all for the subscribing members, We're all in this together. That's about building and developing community, how incredibly important that is. Because when it gets really bad, if you think you're going to make it on your own and take care of yourself, you are deluded. And anybody that's trying to either be a lone wolf or think they can take care of themselves and they can ignore everybody else around them, thing that I've always said is that desperate people do desperate things. You are not prepared until your neighbors are prepared. So what you have to do, if you have neighbors around you, you have to either be sure that most of your neighbors are prepared, can take care of themselves, and you can work together, or you need to, when the world breaks, you need to go someplace where you'll be safe. Because if you don't do that, you'll find yourself in trouble. Well, anyway, we're all in this together, because when it breaks, we're all going to be in that situation together. How well prepared are you to deal with it? Another one, ready, set, evacuate. Now, evacuation is one of those things that's really, really important. And we talk about it, but there's a lot of people that talk about, okay, when things go bad, I'm going to grab my kit, head for the hills. Yeah, and you and 50,000 other people are going to be out there. That's not necessarily a good idea. You've got to have a plan. And what that class is about is helping you understand a plan, having in your mind how you would prepare to do that. And you only do it as an absolute last, you have to. You have no choice. But when you decide you have no choice, is you've got to be sure you're doing that early. So that's an important class for you. You need to go through that. Ready, set, evacuate. And then another one, which is an evacuation kit to live by. That's the replacement for the 72-hour kit. And it's just based on principles, because the typical 72-hour kit that either you buy and you get somebody's list and you put that together, it's pretty much trinkets, baubles, and beads. I like to call them refugee kits because, well, you'll just be a refugee to go down to the rescue center with 5,000 other unhappy people with all of your little trinkets, baubles, and beads waiting for somebody to come feed you and take care of you. I don't want to go there. So anyway, you might want to go through that class. That was in the members area. It used to be a DVD. Now it's just in the members area. So there's a series of classes in this attitude thing, this foundational thing. That's why I call it the foundation module, because this is foundation for everything else. Because if you lose your head and your heart, you won't make it unless somebody comes along and rescues your hiney. Okay, well, let's take a look at a few more things here. We have this other thing that says death will follow in 3 hours. Okay, we had 3 seconds. We'll come back to 3 minutes here, but we're in 3 hours because it fits right in with this map. What would that be that could get you in trouble? Now, if you remember when I talk about these 9 Provident Living modules, they're kind of in an order here. You look at them and you say, well, it's foundation, clothing, water, sanitation, nutrition, shelter, wellness, tools, and supplies. Foundation, because if you lose your head and your heart right now, you set yourself up to not make it. So this next one is clothing. 3 hours? Well, what do you mean 3 hours? Well, 3 hours because when you are in the most severe of conditions, some of the weather that we've had around here recently, up on these mountain peaks here, somehow plane crash, stalled car, remote cabin burns down, you're outside, whatever it is, your clothing is what's going to protect you. And if you have one of those it doesn't have to be below zero, it might just be 15 degrees with driving, blowing snow, and you're totally exposed. Clothing is your personal portable shelter. So that's the name of the class. Now, this was a DVD that I used to sell. It's now available online to people. It's free and in the open because I want you to get these principles here. The proper clothing is personal portable shelter because in extreme conditions, you can die in a big hurry. In most cases, we're talking about the cold, but we could be talking about extreme heat too, because people have died in less than 8 hours when they've been caught in extreme heat. And I've talked about that in the past. Now, one of them that goes along with that is PALS, the Phillips Arctic Living System, the history of PALS. And so you may want to watch that. That's available on YouTube, on my website, so you ought to watch that because that gives you more depth of understanding and backup to when I say clothing, it's serious when it's really, really bad. Winter disasters when all utilities have been lost. That ties right into this loss of power grid. When I say loss of power grid, I don't mean it tripped off. I mean it's gone. and all of your utilities are going to fail. If you don't understand that, you need to go back and watch those videos. They're not very long, and then decide if you really believe that. Now, if you don't, it's okay. I'm not here to make somebody believe something, but I want to give you enough information that I might at least get you thinking, is that possible? Is it really possible? Well, not only is it possible, as I make the point in that class, it's going to happen. So the utilities at some point are going to fail, and they're going to be off for days, weeks, months. I don't know how long. But what are you going to do in the winter when you have no utilities? Now, there's all kinds of cutesy things you can do, and you watch on YouTube and some of this stuff. I'm telling you, what they are showing you only works for a short period of time, not very long, and they don't work very well. There's very few things. What you have to understand is when you have lost all utilities and your whole area has, your whole state has, your whole country has, there's no rescue coming. You're on your own. You're without utilities. Oh, how can you get through that? Well, clothing is a key part of it. Now, that's not the only thing we're going to use, but you need to understand how vital clothing is and be prepared to take care of yourself in a cold house. You still have shelter. That's better than outside in the blizzard. But now I have a house that's 35 degrees, 40 degrees, or in some cases, it might get to be, well, it might go below freezing. That's where the rest of this series of classes comes in, the winter without worries and without fire shelter, that I'm in the process of publishing now, getting them out there. And it's not just a list of stuff to buy and just do this, because that is a very advanced class. I'm teaching you the laws of physics, the physical laws that are involved in this, also the physiology, and also the laws of your mind and your thinking. Those three things is what gets you through. Understanding the laws of physics, understanding the laws of physiology, and understanding the laws of your emotions, your head. We already talked about that a little bit in that foundation section. So you need to understand those. Now, something has occurred, and this is something I've added in and why I'm making some changes. I introduced to you this sleeping cocoon that my friend has developed. I took the technology to him and trained him and what have you. He's using this that I've used for decades and decades. And he did something that was actually outside of me. And the point that I've made in some of my classes, I've told him, you did something I couldn't do, because I have this 30, 40 years of thinking a certain way, having done things, thinking of all the extremes and what have you, and been above the Arctic Circle 5 times in the winter and those kinds of things. And I was focused on one thing. It was years before I came around to this thing we call the thermal johns, the half inch, because I was only focused on the extremes. Well, he did something with the idea of sleeping that I've made the foam sleeping bags for years. They work exceptionally well. He turned it into a device for, I'll say, for everyday use, and especially when you have a chilly or cold house. It is absolutely sterling. You can watch the video on that when I get it up, and it is the best way to go. Absolutely, I promote that, and I want to take it to the world and help him do that, because it's the best possible thing you can have. And I explained a little bit of why the PALS technology is the answer to that. And all of that's contained within the Winter Without Worry series, but I break it down to give you a little subpart so you'll understand that. And then along with the winter, and what we've been working on is some of the do-it-yourself things, the DIY, making your own foam clothing and inner thermal liners and the muckluck and the TJs, all those things, and then ultimately doing the PALs. Those things will come. But I'm here to tell you, and I want to make this very clear because I've said in other classes, the sleeping system is more important than the clothing. I'll come back to that. Okay, so here we have these two paths right now that cover two of those 9 modules, the foundation and the clothing. And for the extremes is what we're talking about in some cases with the clothing. Let's look at another thing here. What about this 3 days thing? Well, most of you would probably know that if you go 3 days with no water, you're in trouble. Now, you can die in less than a day, and sometimes when the conditions are really bad. And in the cold, you might think, well, you don't die all that quick. You're not sweating, so you're not going to lose a lot of water. You dehydrate faster in the cold than you do in the heat if you're out there exposed to it. That's why it's so important that you understand water. But in the water module, when you talk about that, there's really 2 parts that are parallel. There is the water itself, but you have to have sanitary water. So that brings in sanitation and all the sanitation things, because if you get sick because of mishandled sanitation, and you contaminate your water, and or you just contaminate your body and get those things inside of you. Within a few days, you're in trouble. You can die in 3 days or less, or it might take you a week, but it won't be any fun. So we tie those two things together, and here's a class that if you haven't seen it, you need to see it. The Twin Sisters of Misery, Disease, and Death. The Twin Sisters are sanitation and water. They go right together, hand in hand. They are Siamese twins in this, and that takes us right to the major classes, the Liquid of Life, which is 5 hours long. It's in the members area, and the Hidden Deadly Disaster, which I used to publish on DVD. It was 4 DVDs. Now they're all in there, and I've updated them. It's one of the great advantages of publishing online like this, because as I have time, I can add new materials, correct mistakes, and or fill in some more material. I've got another hour I want to add to both of those classes, some more things that people haven't thought about, that they're not doing, and you won't find on YouTube. They're just not out there. Most of the other people teaching about water, some of the things they're teaching are okay for what they'll do, but I'll tell you what, a Berkey, great piece of equipment. I've got them. I have an Aquarain. I have a Catadine, but they will not take care of really, really bad water. They will not. You need to understand that. So that's what's in that class right there. Now, when I talk about some of these things, people are going like, "Oh man, this is harder. This is more complex. Gee, it's going to cost me more time and money." Well, you have to make the decision. I'm going to give you the principles and the understanding. If you really want to be prepared to deal with the worst thing that could possibly happen, there's some things you're going to have to do and learn about. One more thing that ties in with this. Now, this is actually in a wellness area, but it really is in a water area, and that is hypothermia via the dehydration black hole. You see, hypothermia will kill you in a matter of, a few hours to a few days. Well, this brings us right back to the water, and you need to understand that in cold weather, in the winter, you dehydrate very, very rapidly. And you've got to understand that so you make up for the water loss and or find ways to cut down on the water loss. So now when we take a look at these things, we put it all together, and this is what it looks like. Now, I've color-coded these things. I put little tags by them and all, because that is the final goal. That's what I'm working toward to get just as fast as I can. Now, the problem is there are some of those classes which I identify here as of today, because the way they're color-coded, this is the reality of today, where it is right now. I have some of those things that I'm still editing on. Some of them have been edited. I need to get them posted. Sometimes it takes a long time to get them posted because they have to be compressed and then put in. Got a lot to do, but that is where I am going, and it will eventually look like this. Blue means that it's on both my website and on YouTube in the open free library for everybody, however you get there. A lot of those things will also go up on Facebook. I have somebody I think that's going to help me with my Facebook. Things that are in just the public library that are on this chart are just the things that are solid white. Now, I have dozens of other classes that are in the free public library, but this is the roadmap that you really need to start with and be sure you're covered in these areas before you go into some of those other things. And then the green are all for members. That's for the subscribing members. I'll have those things, but this is where we are today. I'm working as fast as I can to get those things up. And I'm going to work basically from left to right and from top to bottom. We'll go through those things. I say that because there's a few people have been asking about some of the things, particularly in the Winter Without Worries, that I will get that whole thing up, but this is going to let me do it faster in the long run, because I'm kind of mixing things in and doing this and that, and I don't have time to do that, so I do something else. This will be a very orderly progression through this. And this roadmap is going to be published. I'm going to put it in several places. I may have it in some different formats. Print it off, and then you can go through and you may look and say, well, I'm okay with I'm already engaged. I understand emergencies and catastrophes and what have you. Yes, I understand what the worst possible thing is and why it's going to occur. I've done that. Okay, so you might check those off. You don't have to watch those, but you may want to go through the other things as deep as you need to go and get all the way over into those members areas, because that's where you get some very advanced things. And there's more going into the members area than I show right there. We have more to get in there in the future. Okay, so that's where we are. Now, I'm going to give you this this rules of three, because you've heard some of this, and this is what it's founded on. Anytime that I go into this, I'm always thinking about the law of provident living. If you're new, maybe you haven't seen that, but that's the law of provident living. I do some extended classes on that because it is about your spiritual foundation, your attitude, your knowledge, and stuff. It's in those four things in that order of priority from top to bottom. And I've already made the point that if you lose your attitude, you lose your life. That's what's going to determine when you live or die, when things get really, really bad. That's going to get you through when it might be impossible, and yet you'll still get. And that's why some of the books I have you read are, there's people that have survived impossible situations, and it's not because they had any stuff that would get them through. They didn't. They survived on, you might say it's grit. Not really. It's really on their attitude, their purpose, their reason, their focus, their commitment. That's what got them through. So some of those books are going to be very important for you to read. But anyway, anytime I go into this, the foundational law is the law of provident living from the top down, spiritual attitude, knowledge, and stuff. And I teach that way. And I want you to understand, notice these arrows off to the left right here of knowledge. Knowledge points up to attitude, and spiritual points down to attitude, because how do you develop an attitude that says I can make it no matter what? It's your spiritual foundation. Each one of us may define that a little bit differently, but I'm going to say there's just more to you than meets the eye. You need to nurture that, take care of that. Whatever your beliefs are in that area, I'd say please do that. And I'd love teaching class in that area when I have a chance. And then get the knowledge and understanding of how and why things work. Notice the formula. If you haven't seen that, K equals I times E. Knowledge is not reading a book. Knowledge is not coming to one of my classes. Knowledge is not going to the internet. There's no knowledge in any of those places. You need to understand that. No knowledge there. The only thing that you're going to get on the internet or in my classes or in a library is information. It becomes knowledge when you assimilate that information and then go use it. You gain experience with it and you prove that it will work. And the problem with a lot of the things that are being taught is they're good within a certain realm of reality. They'll work in one particular situation or two or three, but they don't work across the board. That's where you need to get the depth of experience of how and why things work, get enough knowledge and understanding so that when you look at something on YouTube, there's some guy doing that, and you go like, well, that's pretty neat, but it won't work in this situation or that. Anyway, I hope you get the point. That's why I study these things deeply. All right. We've already covered the 3 seconds. You lose your attitude, your hope, your confidence. And there's a class that I do called the B attitudes. I chose that terminology on purpose. And there's a list of things that make up your B attitudes that you need to have. That's foundational. That's in the foundation module of the 9. That's the bottom foundation for everything. You lose that, you don't make it. Okay, 3 minutes. Well, you don't have oxygen, respiration, or blood circulation. Your brain dies in 3 minutes. Now, we think about it, it's oxygen. Here's the thing that's very interesting when I've been reading books on disease and sickness. What is it that ultimately kills people? The cells die when they don't, and they die quickly when they don't have oxygen to them. Now, they will eventually starve to death for other reasons, no nutrients and things like that. But they shut down when you cut off the oxygen. Takes about 3 minutes, and they will die. So if you bleed out, you don't have oxygen going to the brain. If you can't breathe, or you're smothered or drowning or what have you, you don't have oxygen going to the brain. So it all comes back to they're all suffocation issues, and you die in 3 minutes. Nobody may have presented that to you that way to think about what is it that could kill you in 3 minutes. That's why first aid is very important. If somebody is bleeding seriously, you got to stop that bleeding. That's why you got to get respiration going. Ultimately, you got to get the heart beating. So anyway, just think about it in that way. 3 minutes. So 3 seconds, 3 minutes, well, 3 hours. We already covered that one. That's the hypothermia. It could also be hypothermia, but hypothermia is the one we'll think about the most often for most of us in the extreme cold. Now, notice to the right over here, I have the modules that are associated with that. The attitude is, well, that's foundation. The wellness one covers the oxygen respiration, which would be first aid and all those kinds of things. Hypothermia, well, that's about clothing. It could also be about shelter, because we use shelter to make up for the fact we have lousy clothing. I'm sitting in my house right now in this heated basement where my office is. It's kind of chilly outside. The wind's been blowing, but I'm using shelter and heat. And the heat comes from a tool. I have a tool, which is a furnace, and I'm burning a supply, which is natural gas in this case. It could be wood, it could be propane, and all those things. And then water comes into play again because if you get dehydrated, you're going to go into hypothermia. And foundation, yeah, because you have to understand, you have to have the attitude to prepare yourself to deal with these things. Okay, so we're covering all of these threes by looking at what will kill you the soonest. 3 days, dehydration. It could be hypothermia, that means cold, your core temperature drops. Hyperthermia gets too hot, you die. Also, the other thing that'll get you in this dehydration model is if your electrolytes get out of balance. In other words, if you're perspiring very, very heavily and you're drinking nothing but just plain water, you're not eating, you're not taking any electrolytes into you or eating something, your heart will stop because your electrolytes get way out of whack and it just shuts off. You have to have those electrolytes. They are the triggers of life in you along with the water. So we bring in water, sanitation, because what'll kill you with the dehydration is one of the reasons that people die from cholera or from typhus is they get, the old terminology was bloody flux, bloody diarrhea, where you're now the body trying to flush these critters out of the body is just releasing everything. It's flushing, flushing, flushing. And if you're not getting enough water into you, you die from dehydration, but it's the electrolyte imbalance that usually kills you. Now, the way that you prevent that from occurring is you need to be consuming lots of water and electrolytes by mouth. But if it's very, very serious, then you need to be on an IV bag with electrolytes going into you before you die, because your body will eventually throw off the cholera, the typhus, and a lot of those things if you can stay alive long enough. But it's fatal. Cholera is 60% fatal. And if it's untreated, you can die in less than 8 hours when it's really, really serious, particularly if your health is somewhat compromised. So there we have water, sanitation, supplies, which is electrolytes, food, water, tools. Well, tools that are going to help you purify the water, carry the water, bring the water. Wellness, it's all about the understanding there. And it's foundation because you can feel pretty lousy. And if you don't have an attitude, a purpose, a reason, a beatitude to get you through when you're feeling lousy, you're not going to make it. So again, we tie them back together all the time. Another one here, 3 weeks. Well, that really is mostly about nutrition. Now, when I say nutrition, we are talking, I don't use the word food because there's an awful lot of things that people are buying and consuming thinking it's food and it has nothing to do with nutrition. It's food, you can eat it, and you don't drop dead immediately, but our health is being ravaged. And that's why I did a whole series on books about nutrition that are really important for you to go through. I have those up where you can watch them too. But anyway, nutrition, water is an important part of your nutrition because if you just eat food, don't get any water, you're not going to make it. And then obviously supplies, tools, sanitation, wellness, foundation. So they're all back in there in this nutrition thing. And in the long term, tools and understanding and an attitude that says, I'm going to have to produce a lot of my own food. I have food stored, yes, but I've got to replenish that food. So there comes in animals and things you grow and taking care of all those things. Be willing to do that. How about this 3 months thing? Well, I'll tell you what, we are social creatures. You take and put people in total, absolute isolation, solitary confinement. And by solitary, I mean no outside input. And some people will literally go mad within just a few days. Now, in our case, since you're probably not going to be in a steel box that you can't hear, see, or anything, the sensory deprivation, there have been a lot of experiments on that. That is very hard on us. No sound, nothing to see, very comfortable, neutral temperature and everything. You don't make it very long. But in this case, this is where tools come in that are very important. And this is a wellness thing. See, I want you to understand why these 9 modules exist the way they do. The tool that you would want to have is the ability to communicate, at least to receive. So therefore, shortwave radio, AM, FM radio, and the batteries and the power for them to keep it going so you can listen, so I can hear what's going on around me, get an idea of things. maybe some two-way communication you can use within your community or group so you can help each other, different things like that. But anyway, people in isolation do not live very long healthily. So it's a wellness thing. It's also a foundation thing. Now, one more thing that comes into play that I've already mentioned a little bit, and this is something that I appreciate what my friend has done with his sleeping cocoon, because every one of those 9 areas is seriously affected by your ability to sleep. But you need to understand why your bedding that you have, when you're trying to use it 24/7, week after week, month after month, it's going to be very difficult to get it to work and for you to have a good night's sleep. There are books, you ought to read these books on sleep. In fact, there's one I'm going to do a review on. When he talks about, he's a sleep doctor is what he is, and he went through all of these things about sleep. When he's talking about it from a scientific standpoint, it really opens some understanding here. Very, very important. It's called The Sleep Solution by Dr. Winter. And there were some, I knew some of these things. I sort of knew it. And I'm going to tell the full story of that because I am very serious about that. The ability for you to sleep is critically important. The cocoon will do it better than anything else. I just highly recommend you get one. Well, this is not the sleeping cocoon class, but it's so important because that affects every one of those 9 areas. Your ability to think. A good night's rest is extremely important. And I know you're saying, well, I already rest really well. I've got this really good bed, this whatever it is, the mattress and everything. Yeah, you're in a heated house and you're comfortable in there, and you're not challenging that bedding to the limits of what it'll do. You use that stuff in a house that is a little above freezing, a little below freezing, day after day, week after week. It breaks down. It's harder to take care of. Another story for another time. I encourage you, go to my website. There's a lot of things there. And if you've come because you're already getting the Provident Living Times, that's great. Send it to other people, get them there. Go to my website and go to the YouTube in there. That's how you can get to where I'm going to put these things on YouTube. They will be up. I will post this roadmap as soon as I have it finished a little bit more. I'll post it on my website. I'll put it on YouTube, print it out. You can use that as a guide to go through these things, and then we'll take you into more advanced areas in the future. Those classes that I talk about, the Winter Without Worries, the sanitation, the water class, plus the other one, which is about building community, those are all in that subscription area for supporting members, $5.99 a month. That's how I can afford to pay for the rent of my space on the website and the bandwidth and all these things that I'm using. And all the video things I'm doing, it takes a lot of bandwidth in there. That helps pay for it because that's my income right now. I will start getting a little bit of income. I promote the sleeping cocoon, and I will get a little bit of income from that. I'm not going to promote it just because I get income. I'm going to promote it even if I got nothing. That is the best answer that you can come up with. But I'll start getting a little income from that. So if you go there and buy it and put my name as having referred you to it, that'll help. I get a little referral fee from that. And of course, there's a lot of other things on my website that are free, lots of free things, many free classes and links and other things. And then you've got all these other subscription ones. There's more coming. And on YouTube, what I want to do is get the Winter Without Worries done. As soon as I'm finished with that, I've got dozens of little things to put up on YouTube that I see people not talking about. They're, and particularly in the winter area, but in these other areas, they're not talking about these things. It's to prick a little bit of their understanding and help them understand that there's more to this than what you're getting with the candles under a flower pot for heating your house. Those will work a little bit. And well, I have a propane heater. Yeah, well, when the utilities are gone, where are you going to get more propane? You can't get it. So we need to go more advanced, but I want to do lots of short classes because YouTube is a lot of people, they just want sound bites and quick little things. So that's what I want to do is clear these things out so I can go do some other things that people are not doing. Well, pause right here. I made my presentation. Questions, comments, thoughts that you have. Love to hear from you. I appreciate them. And also I want people to tell me where I've missed something or where I've misstated something, where I've made a mistake. Please call me on anything you want to. I have some of my students come up with ideas and think. My student, Keith Chandler, he was a student. He came up with that sleeping cocoon that is fabulous. So there's people that have come up with things. So anyway, I'll be quiet. Raise your hand or just unmute. I'll watch for it, and let's hear from you. David.
I was going to ask you, those diagrams or flow charts that you had, are you going to have that in a position where we could print it in our home here and then work on it in our spare time and have a copy of it? Yes, that's
Yes,
it.
I will. Yes, I will have that up. I've got a little more tweaking to do just to be sure that I'm settled, because once I said this is it, that is my roadmap for the way that I'm going to finish out these classes. I'm going to go from left to right, top to bottom, kind of across that thing and do it and finish out all of them in there. And then, of course, there'll be other things going on too. But yes, I'll get that for you. Hopefully, maybe by this weekend, I'll be done with it. I'll put it up and then you can do it. And then your job, all of you, will be to say, hey, you said you were going to do this and you've gone off in the left field here. Get back on track. I don't think I'll do that, because I want to follow this, because I've been just almost scatterbrained because I have so many classes I've done before, so many ideas, but I got to get the basics out there. And this chart is the basics. And then we can move on to a lot of things. That Winter Without Worries is beyond the basics, but and so is Without Fire Shelter. But I want to get these things published. So good question. I'll do that as quick as I can, David. Again, David?
Yes, I was going to say thank you. And I was going to say, life is short. We got to eat dessert first, and we can't expand. We can't take where we are and expect to add 30, 40, 50 years to it. So I'm really glad you have this learning roadmap down to a core.
Thank you. Well, I am too, because I've been frustrated. I was trying to do it by how I would post things on YouTube and my website and everything. It's just too difficult to do that. But by having the classes identified and where you have an image of it, it's in there. It'll be in the module, the foundation module. You're going to find, what'll it be? Gloom and doom, panic, denial, apathy, or peace. And that picture will be there. You can go find it, now. It's in there. So you can get these things and you can check it off your list. You can do them in any order you want to. I'm not telling you have to, but this might bring a little bit of order and a little bit of building. These things build on each other. And it's through my experience of what I've taught and why that I'd say this is a recommended order, but you don't have to. You can skip around as much as you want. So that's what I'm trying to do, make it as easy as I can. Nick.
Just a comment. Did on the first aid for breathing, it used to be they would do breathing first, but the last time I saw something, they wanted you to stop bleeding first and then go for the breathing. Is that correct?
Well, it's the quantity of the bleeding. In other words, if it's really a flowing blood, whether it's
something
arterial,
like an artery or something.
Yeah, you have to do it instantly, because you're going to lose oxygen to the brain because you don't have the blood flow. And so, yes, you want to get the bleeding stopped, the serious bleeding stopped. Then you move on to respiration and heartbeat. That is correct. Had a doctor. He was a naturopath, I believe, is who I was listening to, and he said, "What you need to understand is all cell death, is first caused by lack of oxygen to the cells." Whether it is a blood clot that cuts it off to the brain, whether it is a tumor, whether it is something that stops the heart or anything else. He says all death is caused by lack of oxygen to the cells, by whatever means it is. And it's like, well, yeah, think about it. It's really true. Comes right down to it. Jackie?
Jim?
Yeah.
Hi. Hey, you spoke about the spiritual side of making it through all of this, but I didn't notice anything in any of your modules there about the spiritual necessity help everybody get through this stuff. Are you planning on doing something like that?
I do those things. I will do that in the future. I just identify a little bit of what I mean by the spiritual. One of the challenges you have, and I don't have any problem talking about what my beliefs in those things are. I identify that. You know, I'm a Christian. And to me, when I say spiritual, I'm talking about the gospel of Jesus Christ, the whole gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, that'll even get you in trouble. Had one guy that was listening to me on YouTube, or I was on somebody else's thing, and his comment was, well, I was with him until he got up to that thing about Christianity, and then he bailed out. Well, that's fine. I can't help them. But I don't have any problem talking about those things. But I usually like to do it not getting into the doctrinal side of things so much, because you know, we can get into a discussion about these things, but understanding the principles of it, which is, to me, the Christian principles, will pretty well cover you with anything you want to look at. If you just live by them, that will take care of you. But then getting into, well, as I wrote in my newsletter, and I said at the beginning of this class, I was completely blocked trying to figure out what I was going to teach, how I was going to do it. And after you ponder, think, and what have you, I go for outside help. Prayer is very powerful, and listening to the promptings that come from the Spirit. And of course, some people, they have problems. That's okay. But you listen to those things. There's some really good books on that and different ways of looking at it. So yes, I do talk about that. I do that in some classes. And as I get some of this basic stuff cleared out of the way, we may go there more, because you've got to have that spiritual foundation. If you don't have it, it's going to get really, really rough if you don't have a foundation that you know who you are, why you are, where you're going. And one of the reasons that is very important is that you have to understand, the moment you enter this world, it is a terminal experience, period. You know, get over it. It is terminal. You know, me at 75 and with the injuries and a few other things here, yeah, it could be terminal anytime right now, and it's okay. That's where the spiritual foundation comes in, because there are some things that are unsurvivable physically, and it's okay. And that's why you want to have that in place, your understanding of those things, because it's like, this is going to end. Embrace it when the time comes. Do that by knowing who you are, where you come from, where you're going, and then you'll be easier. It'll be easier going along the way. Anyway,
can I mention one other thing before I let you go?
Sure.
I read back, it's been a couple of years ago in a medical commentary somewhere, that cellular hydration can be achieved by eating grapes. Have you ever heard of that?
Well, I would want to see the context in it. Now, if I need to stay hydrated in a very strongly dehydrating situation, if I'm outside, it's 20 below zero and I'm breathing, I'm going to have to consume a gallon of water a day. How many pounds of grapes is that? I mean, you'd have to talk about what's practical. Now, in terms of grapes, one of the things about grapes is they have these phytonutrients in them, and you have some of the sugars and things in them. Although there's a problem if you're trying to get all of your, in my opinion, from what I understand, if you're trying to get all the water that you need from grapes, you're going to get way, way, way too much sugar. It's going to be really hard on you that way. So I would want to see the context where that is talked about. It's understand the principle involved, because it might be about some of the electrolytes that you can get to help you hydrate along with other things that you're drinking. But and it's like, if you were to drink grape juice to be hydrated, the amount of sugar that you've got it's absolutely devastating to the body. So I'd want to know what the context is. So I haven't heard that. I'm just saying, from what I know about fruits and juices and everything, I would wonder about that. And there's a lot of good phytonutrients in darkly colored fruits and vegetables that could be very important for you to be consuming. So anyway, there's lots to learn. This life is complicated, wonderful, and it's really a lot of fun to understand how everything fits together and works. David, do you unmute again?
Yes, I have one more comment. I bought some of those K3 cocoon sleeping bags, and in the last 5 nights I've slept in it. 4 of those nights were in my house. I just put it on my bed and threw my pillow away and jumped in. This morning I woke up and I thought, oh, you didn't sleep in the cocoon last night. And then I woke up and I was in it. I says, oh, yeah, I did sleep in it. I just didn't feel it touching me. And one of those nights I slept in, I threw a cot outside and threw the cocoon on it, took off all my clothes, like always, got it, well, I had my underwear on, and I got in, laid down, went to sleep. Wind was blowing like crazy, man, but I don't care. It was a good night's sleep. Just thought I'd bring that up.
I appreciate that because we're getting nothing but good reports. It's not magic. It won't solve everything. It won't work in every situation. But for me, in an unheated house, for night after night, week after week, month after month, there is not a better solution. I promise you there is not. And I have the experience in some other areas that let me make that claim. There's probably nobody on this meeting tonight that has lived for 2 months with no utilities. There may be somebody out there that has done that, to live off grid and what have you. But for most of us, I've gone 3 weeks with no utilities, using nothing but the foam sleeping bag, the pod that we made, and it below zero ice buildup in it. Whereas the fiber-filled bags and the other fiber fills, they fill up with ice when it's below freezing. They just load up with ice. You have to service them, turn them inside out, hang them up, bring them in warm rooms and things like that. This sleeping bag was out it was actually on top of the snow above the Arctic Circle, wrapped up in its plastic sheet and or its bivy sack. Well, we didn't have bivy sacks then. And out there in the cold. It was never brought into a warm space. It was slept in 21 nights and virtually no ice buildup in it. Whereas in the fiber filled bag with Qualifill and all these wonderful things, it was only slept in 8 nights. And when we weighed it, when I got home and dried it, it had 8.5 pounds of water. It had a gallon of water in it after 8 nights. And the foam bag had 8 ounces of water in it. I have the experience. I understand the physics of why that's the case, and I love teaching about it. It'll just work better than anything else. So anyway, other thoughts, comments, questions we have? I'll try and get this thing posted on my website, so you'll be able to have this image and think about it, and come Saturday morning and ask questions about it or anything else, and I'll be scrambling to get as much done as I can between now and then. Anybody else? Let's see, Jackie.
Yeah. Hey, on that sleeping bag thing you're talking about, does it make a difference in what the person is actually wearing when they climb into something like that? Or if you're using I know you talked about wrapping plastic around a sleeping bag to keep the stuff off of you. Does it matter what the person's wearing inside?
Well, it certainly can.
You wear?
What you
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
What you don't want to wear is cotton. Cotton will detract from the performance. Now, it'll still work better than regular bedding, but you'd prefer to not have cotton on inside of it, particularly if you're, I'll say, pushing the limits, because you will not get the comfort range inside of either the foam sleeping pod that I'll teach you to make, or in the cocoon. If you're wearing cotton and it's either in a very warm environment, you can use this same sleeping system at 60, 70 degrees above zero. You can also use it down into well below freezing, down into the teens and single numbers. But if you have cotton on, what it does is it draws in that temperature range to where it's narrower. You can't go as cold, and you can't be comfortable as hot. You'll overheat and you'll get cold. So it does make a difference what you wear. And so I'll either be wearing all synthetic, my foam clothing, but right now, I'm in just cool areas, I sleep in just synthetic underwear. And it's freeing because you're inside of this little tube is what it's like inside of this little room that's comfortably warm to neutral, freedom of movement in there and what have you, no blanket, nothing holding to you. I mean, it's actually wonderfully freeing to sleep like that. If you want to extend the temperature range, then you can, if you wear, I'll say, some insulation inside of this sleeping cocoon, then you can extend the temperature range down. The best way to do it is use like the 1/2 inch thermal johns or inner thermal liners you'd make. That'll take anybody well below zero using those. And I don't rate that cocoon for below zero for somebody like me, old buzzard, lots of injury, poor circulation. I've slept in it at 22 degrees in just my synthetic underwear. Very comfortable, just wonderful to be in. But other people can, go lower temperatures than that. But I'm an old guy.
Jim, I have a question.
Yes.
I've been on the website. Where do we go to order that? The sleeping bag or the cocoon?
K3core.com.
Okay.
It's not on my, now there is, in fact, on my website, there's a little advertisement about it. One thing you want to do when you go to that website, be sure that you fill out the discount questionnaire, because you'll get a 10% discount if you fill that out. That'll get you registered. Then the other thing it does, where I've referred you, you put in my name or the code that we use. You just put my name in, because I do get a little referral fee off that. Because I'm excited about doing this. I want people to get it. But if you can't afford to buy one or don't want to make your own, I'll teach you how to make the foam sleeping pod, and it will do a great job. But it doesn't have the features of this cocoon, because it's a neat thing that he's done. I'm really excited about it. K3core.com. If you have any questions on it, you can always email me, call me, and I'll be glad to help any way I can. David?
I was just going to say, the times I've slept in it, the last 5, I just used the nylon underwear.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get that in different types of mesh and whatever.
Yeah, it's just so nice to do that. Now, when I sleep regularly with my, my pajamas, I'm not in that cocoon. The reason I'm very jazzed about that is I can get in that sleeping cocoon to lay down, but I don't lay down very well yet because of all the injury to my back and hips and things. Laying down is difficult. I start out my sleeping in a recliner, and then usually in the morning after I've woken up, maybe once or twice in the night, old guys have that problem. Then I can go lay down for the last 2 or 3 hours, and I get a better sleep. I lay down on my side. I can't lay on my back, but I lay on my side in that cocoon, pick up another 2 or 3 hours of much better sleep than in the recliner. So I am getting experience in it, and I'm in a basement room that's, it's in the 60s. I've done it, colder than that in the garage, but and out on the back deck. But I just sleep in it on my bed. Works wonderfully well. David?
I would just say one more thing about that cocoon. If you don't need a real big pillow, which you don't, because you can buy pillows with them. I got little 3/4 inch pillows that he made for me, Keith did, but you just reach up into any of the 4 interior corners and grab the loop and pull that in 90 degrees, and now you've got a pillow, and when you're tired of it, you just push it back out of there.
Right. That's one of those neat little things that showed up here a week ago, as we were playing with things and putting those loops inside, which were to tie on a little gear bag in there so you don't lose it. And there'll be some gear bags that'll be available. And then it was like, yeah, just grab it and pull it in and fold that in there. And now you got a pillow, whether your head's inside or if your head is outside, you have even more of a pillow. So that there's lots, it's feature rich. It's really a neat piece of equipment. Jackie.
So is this thing something that you put your head in, you just said? I mean, if you're claustrophobic, is it like that?
Well, you can, but you don't have to. I mean, here it is. This was literally my test bed in the garage that I slept. Now the new ones don't look like that. This has got rounded ends on them. The rounded ends are not there anymore. I don't even have a picture of what the new one is. I have one. I'll take pictures of it, but I haven't done that yet. I just got it today. And but you can sleep with your your head out, or you can get all the way down inside as here. But what's nice about this, when you go all the way inside, there's nothing in your face. It stands away from you. It is a cocoon. That's the best way to describe it. That's why that name is the right way to call it, because it's a cocoon. It's a little cylinder kinds of thing you're inside of. And if you lay on your side and it's dark and your eyes are closed, it could be 6 feet away from you. You can't see anything. I turn on a flashlight inside and I see that it's standing away from me. So it's not in your face. A regular sleeping bag, you put your head in there, the darn thing is in your face because of they're soft and they drape. This doesn't drape. That's a blessing. There's great advantages to this.
Jim,
Yes.
can you turn in them
Oh, yeah.
in there? Okay.
Now you can, what Keith does, he turns the whole bag. I can't do that because I'm very limited in my mobility. So I'm inside of it. I just roll myself inside of it. The inside material is slippery. And so I just roll on it in there and get on my side or roll on to my other side in there. But he rolls the whole bag. I don't.
Okay.
Any other questions anybody have here?
Jim, I was
Yes.
just wondering, how easy is it to clean?
Well, one of the advantages of having a foam sleeping bag, whatever it is, a pod or a cocoon, is that I can wash this thing using, a garden hose, a little bit of detergent, throw it in the bathtub is what you do. Put it in the bathtub, put some little bit of soap in there, a liquid detergent, and you would then just walk on it, put the grandkids in there to jump on it or what have you. You can walk on it in shower, bed, and because it has this open matrix of the material, this foam, it doesn't have these little cross points of the fibers and everything in there. It releases the oils, the fats, the dirt very easily, and they'll flush out of the bag quite easily. So you can wash it at home, is the bottom line. Well, I thank you for tonight, your questions, your comments. I will see you come Saturday, and next week we'll be working on plowing through that roadmap. Have yourself a good evening and good night.